Welcome to another episode in the Winning Edge Talks podcast series. I am Vishwanath, your host. I'm a sports psychology coach and sports mental performance analyst. The title of this episode is Sports Are Not Life or Death. In the last 4 months of 2021, 4 young shooters committed suicide. The reasons attributed to these untimely deaths have been unsatisfactory performance, disappointment, stress, and depression. The premature end to their lives has sent shockwaves within Indian sports, especially to the shooting fraternity. People at high places are scrambling for ideas on how to prevent this in the future. Abhinav Bindra, a shooter himself, has written to NRAI offering help to young shooters. The first shooter to end his life was Namanveer Singh Brar. This was in September 2021. He was a 28-year-old trap shooter. He had finished 4th in the minimum qualification score, the MQS, at the Delhi Shooting World Cup in March 2021. He was married recently and his wife is expecting a child. Khushsirat Kaur Sandhu was a 17-year-old international pistol shooter who took her own life in December 2021. Her father is reported to have said her performance in the 64th National Shooting Championships was not in par, but she did not betray any visible signs of disappointment. Had she shared with us what she was going through, we would have counseled her. Hunardeep Singh Sonal is a state-level shooter who shot himself in the head during October 2021. His family members said he was upset after he sustained an injury. Later, he suffered from depression as he thought the injury had ended his career as a shooter. Konika Layak, a 28-year-old shooter, hanged herself in her hostel room in December 2021. She had failed to qualify during the Nationals in 2021. She was disqualified for alleged tampering of target. After she was disqualified from the Nationals, she claimed that she was forced to admit that she had cheated and write an apology. In a letter found after the death, which she had addressed to her parents, she mentioned that she was dissatisfied with her performance and she was sorry for failing to meet the expectations of her parents. We don't know whether the reason for her for taking this extreme step was her poor performance or the guilt, humiliation and shame she might have experienced after the disqualification. We can also recall a similar incident when Ritika Pogat, a 17-year-old wrestler hailing from the famous Pogat family, had committed suicide in earlier of March 2021 because she was disappointed with her performance in the state championship wrestling event. Sports was never a career option in India earlier. All that has changed now. The youngsters, inspired by their sporting icons, are dreaming of a great career for themselves in sports. They decide to turn professionals at a very young age. They even pursue their education through open schooling. But success coming out of a sporting career is not assured to them. They have to struggle hard and make plenty of sacrifices. It is a hotbed of competition out there. With all the commitment they put forth, they may not be achieving the results that they aspire, and this can give them insecurity. The question, what if I don't make it, is always in the back of their minds. The pressure to secure a career through sports makes them desperate. Not every athlete has the planning and the preparation for an alternative career. if they can't make it in sports. This makes them even more anxious and vulnerable if they don't make the progress they had in mind. This is the main reason athletes who come from poor backgrounds decide to end their lives prematurely. But to consider sport as a do or die situation is a drastic step. Someone needs to instill hope in them that their career is far from over and an alternate career is possible through proper planning. The system needs to stand up to them in support. When youngsters considered as the future of the country start taking success and failure as a matter of life and death, then it's a matter of grave concern. The youth have to value life, which is their biggest gift. They have to make the best out of life, in spite of failures they experience. It is easier to say this, but we are strangers to the suicides the young shooters have committed. We don't know the complete details about the person as a whole. What kind of personality did they have? What was their upbringing? And what were the circumstances in which they ended their lives? Because neither the parents, well-wishers, friends, the coaches and the fellow shooters have come out and given us a detailed information about what led to this final drastic step. All that we can do is to assume about the probable causes that led to the final act, falling back on the early reports, research and literature available in this matter. Death cannot be reversed, and all that we can now do is to wake up and see that young athletes are protected from taking such decisions in the future. The spate of suicides in the recent months is an eye-opener to the sporting community. It is a reminder to the stakeholders to come together to address this issue. There lies a responsibility in all of us. I remember India had its best Olympics till date at Tokyo in 2021. We were overjoyed with the achievements of our athletes, but we must not just celebrate and go overboard with the success of a handful, but also to stand up with those who did not make it. There is an urgent need to address the feelings of those who are struggling to fulfill their dreams. To remind ourselves, we in recent years have been reading and hearing a lot about the mental health issues the athletes are facing worldwide. The athletes are coming out in the open these days about their mental health issues, and the world is standing up to them, showing concern and empathy. The names that quickly come to our mind are those of Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka. The issue of suicides also falls under the broad category of mental health. The whole world must stand up to support them mentally. When it comes to the ability of the athletes to handle the challenges, adversities and setbacks later in their life, it is important to understand what kind of upbringing and conditioning they had from their childhood, whether they were heard, respected, shown empathy and given support by their parents, guardians or other caregivers. This is because their personality is developed from the childhood. Now, what do the athletes need? What can we give them? First of all, the athletes have to be given the freedom to express their feelings, to be given patient listening without being interrupted and judged, to be asked about their feelings rather than being criticized for their shortcomings. They need to be encouraged to have one or two people close to them with whom they can share their feelings. It can be a brother, sister, cousin, friend, classmate, or a teammate. To enjoy their sport and perform freely without being pressurized for results. To fix realistic goals and expectations. The athletes need to be accepted for what they are instead of what they should be. The athletes have to be shown empathy when they fail. The athletes should not be labeled as failures. The athletes have to be told often, "We are with you," when they are not progressing according to their expectations. To be given the assurance that there is life beyond sport and they can succeed in life no matter what happens in sport. This gives them the security and hope in life. What parents, coaches, and others can do to see such incidents will not take place in the future. First of all, parents and coaches have to reduce their own expectations. They need to keep the channels of communication open to the athletes and the children. They need to be empathetic with the athletes. Coaches must encourage the athletes to discuss with them all their issues, whether they are personal or sports related. They need to ask the athletes to enjoy competition, focus on the process rather on the results. Parents must not discuss with the athletes about the struggles they are facing whilst promoting them. Parents must work to increase the self-esteem and self-image of their children. Coaches must not compare the athletes with others. Coaches must not abuse or give athletes physical punishment when the athletes make mistakes and lose in competitions. Parents and coaches must not judge and pressurize the athletes for bigger results. Coaches must understand the athletes and treat them as individuals rather than adopting a one-size-fits-all approach. They must bring to the notice of the athletes about the role of counselors and sports psychologists and how they will help them to address their mental health concerns, psychological and performance-related issues. They must be encouraged to seek the help of counselors and psychologists when they are feeling low mentally. One of the main reasons for athletes is in their hesitancy to be counseled. That is, there is a taboo behind psychological consultation. Now, this is because they fear confidentiality, ridicule, and being judged. It is the responsibility of the parents and coaches to clear the misconception surrounding this. The coaches from time to time need to invite counselors and psychologists to interact with the athletes to make them build a better bond and relationship so that if there is an issue in the future, the athletes can come forward and share their feelings with the counselors and psychologists. Athletes must know about the existence of mental health help centers, suicide helplines, and the contact numbers of counselors, mental health workers, and psychologists to be contacted in case of psychological distress or suicidal tendencies. Sports are not life and death situation. They are just one among the many activities you take part in your life. This is Vishwanath signing off.